In this video, we're going to talk about Le Chatelier's principle. And this is a super powerful principle that involves no math at all, but we can use in lots of different places where we honestly can't be bothered to do a calculation. One way to write it says that when we stress an equilibrium, the equilibrium shifts in a way to remove the stress. And I really like this, even though some people complain that this is maybe a naughty way to say the principle. I think it really gets the point across. For instance, consider yourself, consider your homeostasis, right? If you are too hot, in temperature, what does that mean that your body will do? You will probably sweat. And the reason you sweat is that sweating tends to cool you down as you evaporate the water. It takes energy and takes it away from you and cools you off. Now, let's say the opposite thing is true. Let's say you are too cold. So what do? You shiver. So the shiver, the involuntary movement of the muscles, acts as a way to warm you back up. So you basically do the complete opposite. So in Le Chatelier's principle, anything we do, the system tries to respond in a way to kind of undo the change and relieve that stress. Now, in terms of chemistry, the three different stresses that we're going to see are going to involve changes in concentration, or changes in pressure, or changes in temperature. And essentially what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and do the complete opposite. So if anything increases the concentration, we are going to try and find a way to decrease the concentration. If anything increases the pressure, we're going to try and find a way to decrease it back again. And if anything, say, increases the temperature, we're going to find a way to do the opposite, to counteract that increase, to decrease the temperature. So what you're going to do is think like a 2-year-old, right? Whatever the system is doing, you want to do the complete opposite. Let's look at some more concrete examples. So for instance, let's look at the equilibrium between N2O4 and NO2. So this is at equilibrium. And let's say that we add some NO2 to the equilibrium. This is our stress. So our equilibrium responds in a way to try and relieve that stress. And so the relief is to try and remove NO2. So essentially, we're just doing the opposite. How do we remove NO2? The answer is we take some of the NO2 and we convert it into N2O4. We don't convert all of it. We just take some of those molecules and bind them up and turn them into N2O4. So we call this a shift to the left-hand side. So in an ice chart, right, we would be taken away. We'd be writing our -2x's here, and we'd be writing our +x's here. If we look at another equilibrium, so for instance, the dissolution of calcium phosphate. So calcium phosphate is something like this, and it can dissolve and it can form calcium ions and phosphate ions. And maybe we go ahead and we lower the concentration of calcium. Okay, that is a stress. So the equilibrium will respond in a way to try and relieve that stress. So the stress relief will be, we try and find a way to increase the concentration of calcium. And in this reaction here, if we can increase the concentration of calcium, one way to do it is by taking solid calcium phosphate and letting a little bit more of it dissolve. So as more of it dissolves, you essentially make more calcium and also more phosphate ions. And so we respond to that as a shift to the right-hand side. So let's say that for some reason your body is depleting the calcium concentration in your blood. One way to do it is to take the calcium phosphate in your bones and let a little bit more dissolve and dissociate to restore the calcium concentration in your bloodstream. And of course, we call this osteoporosis in humans when this happens. We look at a couple more stresses. We can look at the carbonic acid in our blood. That helps to keep our blood at a particular pH. And it can break down and it can form water and carbon dioxide in your lungs. And so if you were to decrease the concentration of CO2, okay, that would disturb equilibrium. So that would be our stress. And so our relief would be to increase the concentration of CO2. And that would involve a breakdown of carbonic acid to restore the CO2 concentration. So that would be a shift to the right-hand side. And this is a major problem because if we shift to the right-hand side, we remove this acidic molecule here, our blood pH is going to change and possibly kill us, or at least possibly make us very faint and dizzy. So if you hyperventilate, if you breathe out and remove all that extra carbon dioxide, your body basically makes and restores the balance by breaking down carbonic acid in the bloodstream. And unfortunately, this makes your blood less acidic, which makes you quite dizzy. And of course, the relief, right, to make more CO2, well, one way your body can do it. Another way that you can help your body do it is to breathe into a paper bag. And then as you breathe out, the CO2 leaves your body. But when you breathe back in again, you bring some of that back inside of you. And so you don't remove it nearly as badly as before.